This may be my last video about Tops knives. Unless, however, they design another one like this. Granted, they didn't come up with this design. They were commissioned by, I'm guessing, Smokey Mountain Knife Works, who are the owners of the brand name Marbles, who makes the Woodcraft. Now I will show you some pictures that I captured off of the internet of old Marbles knives. What I will also do is tell you a little history of Marbles knives and the evolution of the Woodcraft. It's been around since 1915, and it has accompanied many a hunter and woodsman out in the woods. I believe the original idea of the knife was conceived by George W. Brooks back in 1914, who then presented it to Webster Marbles, who then proceeded to manufacture the knife and never give Brooks credit. From what I've read about Webster Marbles, it doesn't seem inconceivable that he would leave somebody out and try and take all the credit. Just saying, that's not cool. Back when I first saw it about 30 years ago, I was at a knife show. I thought, that's an interesting shape, and I kind of blew it off. I said, I'm used to what everybody else is used to at the time. Every kind of conceivable knife manufacturer was making loveless dropped point hunters, and if you didn't want a dropped point, you were getting a clipped point, a la buck 110 and buck 119. So that's what my diet of cutlery was on. It wasn't until about 2000 when I read an article in Blade magazine by Ed Fowler, who talked about the Woodcraft and how he thought that it was just a fantastic design and construction, and just extolled all of the benefits of that blade shape. And I thought, hey, Ed Fowler is quite the knife maker. Maybe he's onto something. So off to a knife show I go. Much to my delight, there was a guy at this knife show who had a table full of vintage knives and a nice selection of Marbles, Woodcraft, and Marbles Ideal. The fun thing about all these vintage knives is that the manufacturing process wasn't really a manufacturing process. It was more of a crafting process. They crafted knives. They didn't manufacture knives. It was a bunch of different guys who got really good at their particular craft, either grinding or handles or finish work, sharpening, whatever, who teamed up in a factory setting, obviously, and made these knives. There was this table, and there were about 8 knives. I had the pick of the litter. I always get to knife shows early. So with all of those hand operations, there are going to be subtle idiosyncrasies between each knife. And I happened to find one that just ticked all the boxes. It had a great blade shape. It hadn't been modified. The handle and the blade met at a nice angle. The handle was actually in exceptional shape, so I chose that one. And I was lucky in the fact that this particular seller had all the sheaths separate from the knife, meaning I was able to hand select a sheath. I found a sheath that was in great shape, so next thing you know, old Jed's a millionaire. Paid the man what he was asking and proceeded to walk around the show looking at all the custom makers. Pro tip for you youngsters out there who may not have been schooled properly. When you're at a knife show and you find a table with a custom maker and he has his wares out there and there's a price by the knife, that doesn't mean that's a suggested price. That's the price. There's no negotiating. Don't do it. You'll insult the maker. You might find yourself not able to buy that knife. Just take your wallet out and hand them the money. That's it. Say thank you very much. Have a nice day. And before you reach down To pick up a knife, you ask permission. Those are basically the rules. Fast forward 23 years later, I no longer have that knife. Wish I did, because I would like to be able to do a side-by-side, literally side-by-side comparison with this Tops interpretation of the knife. Thank God for small miracles. Really. Because asking Tops to design something is almost like asking Cold Steel to design something. It could be crazy. Not the case. Bravo, Tops. You guys knocked it out of the park with this knife. Now there's a whole lot of stuff I could tell you about the original knives having the leather handle, and that Marbles was the first guy to do that, and all the different makers that followed suit, like K-Bar with their K-Bar fighting knife. A lot of Randall made knives come in this configuration. Leather is one, cheap, always available. You can modify it. If you damage it, you can repair it. So why not? The original Marbles Woodcraft had a small handle. Now that was on purpose. That was not because back then guys had little toy hands. It was because, as opposed to this knife where there's just a little sharpening choil, the choil would have been more like what's on this Randall, but maybe slightly less, because that's where you put your finger when you choke up to skin something. Well, not everybody's into skinning and all that and liking to choke up, so over the years, the handle of the Woodcraft actually grew. What's funny, and I'm chuckling inside, you would think that after Tops gets the call and they're charged with coming up with a modern design of a classic knife, that maybe some sort of whiz-bang, highfalutin, blue blood, super duper, space age steel would be used. Maybe 3V, Magna Cut. Who knows? 1095, just like the original. Now I have nothing against 1095. George Washington had 1095 in his axe. It's obviously a good steel, and it's been around forever, and you can get a good heat treat out of it. That being said, the only thing really modern about this knife is the handle. It's micarta. Steel bolts, which I like because they're raised. It gives your hand a little more of something to purchase and feel, so you know where your hand is. The two-tone micarta, a la their Viking series, is really neat. I like the choice of colors. It's their brown that you would find on the Tannenboka and lots of others, and black. Nice shape. Notice there's no real sharp spots, hot spots, and I like the two brass thong holes a la Tannenboka. That's a cool touch. The finger groove is actually very functional. No sharp spot like you'd find on a lot of other stuff. And it creates its own guard, which is nice because then the blade, like I showed you before, goes all the way back to this sharpening choil. Another thing that I am applauding Tops for is the thumb jimping. This is subtle, nicely rounded, usable, and classy looking. The piece de resistance, in my opinion, is this blade coating. Wow. It's a neat copper color. It's got sparkles in it. Pictures do not do it any justice. Really. What a cool coating. I'm just blown away by it. It's not the usual black traction coating. It's cool. Whoever came up with this, bravo to you as well. They kept the blade shape, which I think you will find a joy to use. No flat surface. It's constantly curving, which is neat. It could be used in the kitchen. It can be used out in the field. This is larger than you might think. Here's an SE4. There's probably only an 1/8 of an inch difference. If you were going to baton with this, I would suggest file this down. If you flatten that a little bit, you may find that your baton lasts longer. But, I mean, this really isn't a batoning knife, though it could take it. It's thick steel. I do not know the specs. I don't care to learn the specs. It's thick, it's well balanced, it's a beast. The edge, First thing I did was use my nifty patented convex edge making apparatus and put a nice edge on it and then strop it. All of those positives lead us up to, unfortunately, a major negative. I've done a video about this in the past. You can watch it right there. It has to do with the snap tab on Randall made sheaths. See that? This is a very antique, antiquated design that has disaster written all over it. So why would Tops incorporate this sheath with this knife? I don't know. It doesn't make sense. It is finely crafted. It is a nice piece of leather, nice and thick, but it has that. Now that's supposed to stay there. It doesn't. So, here you are. You're doing your thing. Oh, I'm going to put my knife back in the sheath. Oh, tab's in the way. I'm going to push it in anyway. Well, what have you done? You done fucked up your sheath. Look at that. Because this is a nice piece of leather, I'm not throwing it in the trash can. I'm throwing it in the parts bucket. Woodcraft goes in this sheath perfectly. Wet molded it just a little bit. Hey Tom, where'd you get that sheath? Glad you asked. Condor. What's funny is if you wanted to get a custom sheath, you could order one, probably to the tune of 75 bucks or more. Who knows? A lot of makers out there. The price is all over the place. Or you could buy a Condor knife, get the sheath, throw the knife away, keep the sheath, and spend less. Unlike the Brush Wolf, I'm not telling you to hold off on buying one of these. Get one, but get another sheath. Thanks for watching.